Welcome back to the Heartbeat of Money. I'm Jon P. Moffitt, and today I want to walk you through a conversation most business owners avoid until it's too late. We're going to talk about what your business is really worth, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Because the truth is, a real business sits on more than just numbers. It sits on what I call the three-legged stool of ownership. In every season, whether you're scaling, selling, or surviving, your success rests on three things: your emotion, your mindset, and your spirit. And today, we're going to test all three. Let's start with the biggest myth in business, that revenue equals value. I hear it all the time. Jon, I'm doing $2 million a year. Surely my business is worth something. But that's not how valuation works. And it's not what buyers are looking for. This is a mindset trap. The fact that you believe that your top line revenue is the same as transferable value. And it's usually driven by emotion, pride, hope, and even fear. You see, the first leg of the stool, the emotional legs, is where most business owners collapse. They're not just disappointed in the numbers, they feel betrayed by them because the business defines you, and you feel like if the business isn't doing well, I'm not doing well in life. And it's one of the biggest mindset shifts that you don't carry your identity with the performance of the business. The business is like anything else you build, like, for example, you build a car, it might not start. It might not work properly, just because, there might be something in the carburetor that's not quite tweaked right, or it's not getting gas or something. But trial and error, eventually you'll get that car started and you'll be able to drive it. A business is the same way. You're building it, but it doesn't have to define your identity. And a lot of times when people work for years and they go to get a value of their business and it's not quite valued where they want, they think it's a personal reflection of themselves. And the first part is trying to separate that in your mind and try to think of, I'm building something, I'm going to be testing things, but it doesn't define me and who I am emotionally, spiritually. And so that's one of the biggest things that I can say is hard for entrepreneurs, to start to separate their emotion to who they are from what the business actually is doing or performing. Of course, we always feel great when it's doing well, and we always feel bad when it's not doing well, but we don't really want it to define us. And so revenue is kind of like vanity, right? The thing that you really got to look at is cash flow and low risk. So cash flow and low risk actually equals value. A $3 million business with no systems and 80% of its sales from one client is nearly worthless. You can't really sell something that's like your job. You can really only sell the business. And so, buyers aren't looking for owner-centric operations because they're toxic to buyers. If you can't literally walk away from your business for 3 months, whether you go on vacation or just take a sabbatical or whatever, and the business can't survive, that should tell you a lot. So let's flip it. What do buyers actually care about? It's not your top line revenue. It's about what happens if they step into your shoes tomorrow. And here's a checklist that you can maybe run through your mind. And this is kind of the mindset of the leg. You're having to start to think like a buyer. So you want to kind of take yourself out of the ownership and say, I'm going to buy my own business, and I want to buy something that is not just, being built, but I'm buying something that I can walk into and it can start to run. They're not investing in how hard you work. They're investing on how well the business works without you. And so here's your checklist. Okay. Do you have clean organized financials, like 3 years minimum? Can you pull it right now today? Do you have reoccurring, predictable cash flow? So things that are like bread and butter, can come in all the time, and it provides your cash flow for you. Are your contracts that you have transferable And are your customer relationships transferable? Meaning that if you walked away, could somebody else take over those relationships? And then your leadership team. Can your leadership team that you have operate without you in place? And how would they feel if somebody else, owned the business? And you should ask yourself that. You should also look at your diversified revenue. No one customer should be more than 25% of your revenue. And, the other thing that you should be looking at is, your documented of your standard operating procedures and systems. If you don't have this in place, like most businesses don't have their standard operating procedures in place, like why do I need to put a list together on how to send an email or respond to this or whatever it might be? What I would say is start to pick with things that are dependent upon you as an owner and see if you can put a system in place empowering one of your leaders or a group of employees to kind of take over that system and document it. And even if you just do one at a time or one a month, before a year or 2 years go by, you'll have a nice suite of standard operating procedures that will create some value in the business so that when the buyer comes in, they're like, oh, we know how to do that. We don't really, if the owner were to go away tomorrow, we could still work with the team to figure this out. I know it seems a little redundant, but it's really important. It also starts to show the team that your mindset is to not be there and you're trusting them to make decisions. Another thing in the checklist is secure your lease terms. Don't, if you're at month to month, start to negotiate a longer term lease or to get out of the lease or put some provisions in there. If you need to shut down for a period of time, it won't cause any type of penalties or fees. Some options on longer term leases. These are all just a few points. We have a full lease to legacy system that we can walk you through that really dives into the lease, or even think about transferring from your lease into real estate ownership. I see so many businesses every day that pay so much money in their lease payment where they could actually own the real estate or own a piece of real estate for less than what they're paying their lease terms for. And so there's a lot of creative ways to get into ownership. There's seller carry financing, there's investor money, there's syndicates or partnerships that you can own a percentage of what you're in. But the other things that does is it allows when you go to sell your business, there's an asset there to work with the buyer. And we can dive deeper into that. You want to clean up your debt structure. So if you've got a bunch of debt all over the place, you might want to consolidate it. I've seen businesses with merchant credit advances, 2 or 3 of those, and we want to try to clean those up, or we even want to pay those off and have the company be more debt free as it moves forward. And so you want to kind of clean up your debt structure and your interest rates and those types of things. And, buyers don't buy potential. So if you're like, oh, we can grow the business here and grow the business there. If you haven't already started to grow the business and show some success, it's a little harder to get a value out of that potential. And they want to buy predictable performance. So, you want year over year to be performing with a certain type of product or a certain type of client or a certain type of, way of doing things. And so you'll get more value if you can have predictable performance. Now let's talk about the part that most people avoid, the emotional side. Because you've poured your soul into the business, it's personal. But the market doesn't care about how hard you work. It cares how transferable it is. This section is the heart of the stool, the emotional leg again. When your identity, I should say, is wrapped up in your business, value feels personal. We kind of talked about that before. But I'm here to tell you, you're not your balance sheet. The grief you feel, that's real. But so is the opportunity to grow from it. So, emotional investment does not equal financial valuation. Grief, disbelief, denial, and is a normal reaction. And so we all go through this kind of like identity crisis. If my business isn't valuable, what does that say about me? So remember, you are not your business. You're a steward, not a product. You are a steward of the product and of the business. So what do we do about that? It's one of the reasons, and that's where the value framework comes in. It's a system I use with clients to turn owner dependent, unsellable businesses into an asset that attracts buyers. The value framework is designed to do more than just improve your business. It's to improve your thinking more than anything, because the value isn't built by accident. It's engineered by shifting your mindset from short-term hustle to long-term transferability. So let me just kind of walk you through each one of the steps in the value framework at a very high level. So for example, the V, it stands for valuation and financial health. Know your numbers, get a real valuation on your business. Don't be guessing. Alignment and operational optimization. So systems, documentation, you want to delegate. That's the A. The L is leveraging your brand and marketing, strong marketing, lead flow, and positioning. U, upgrade your financial structure, clean up your debt, get capital ready, and get credit worthiness. Make sure your company can actually, without your personal financial information, can borrow money and can expand and be credit worthy. And then execute the exit, build to sell or scale on your own terms. And that's the E. You don't have to sell tomorrow, but you do need to think about selling. And you do need to think to build like you could sell tomorrow. And so I tell everybody, even if you're just starting your business, you want to build it to sell. And you want to you want to have these things in mind as you're building your company. It really is going to help create the value. So let me share some like real examples of what this looks like. So a client with, let's say it's 1.8 million in revenue, but has no contracts. It has one client, 70% of its sales, and the owner has basically handles nearly everything, is worth pretty much nothing. But if you apply the value framework to it, we diversify revenue, we document systems, we add some operations managers, we clean up the lease and financials, and the valuation increases 3.5 times in probably less than 12 months just by taking a few of those steps. And so they didn't change their business, if you think about it. They changed their belief system. They worked through the emotion of grief. They upgraded their mindset, and they began to lead from a place of spirit and stewardship of what they're actually building in this business. And so it also helps peel away the identity, and your identity becomes a little bit different. It's not so tied up intimately. So here's the truth. Your business might not be worth what you think it is, but it can be. What matters now is that you know which leg of the stool is shaking, and you can do something about it. You can fix your emotion. You can upgrade your mindset, and you can anchor your spirit. That's how we build wealth with a heartbeat. In today's episode, I hope it hit home. Subscribe, share with another business owner who needs to hear this. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're ready to explore the real value of your business, you can visit our website at nextstagewealth.com. It walks you through the value framework and some of the other things we offer. We're also going to be launching here in the next month a 3-day immersive accelerator to get ready for capital if you're looking for capital. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about real estate, which is going to be fun. It's always one of my favorite things to talk about, and why owning the ground you stand on might be the key to building generational wealth that you can touch. So remember, build with purpose, exit with power, and always be thinking beyond the exit. We'll see you in the next episode. I'm excited that you're part of this journey with us at the Heartbeat of Money. Thank you.